Okay, here we go. Looks like we're live. We already have some people tuning in. That's good. You early birds to class. Here, I'm going to paste this in here. This is the reading we're going through today. Once we get 20 or so people logged in, then we'll go ahead and do the some class business and talk about what we're what was the word I'm looking for? So how we're going to do the quizzes based on survey results from the one I sent out. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting for everybody to get logged in, you guys are going to meet the new members of our family. Okay. So this is Penguin. Oh, and she just pooped on me. Yeah. This is Penguin. She's going to lay dark chocolate covered eggs, or colored, not covered. I wish colored. Dark chocolate colored eggs. These are all about 6 weeks old, so they're in their ugly phase, so that's fun. So this is Penguin. This one's Strawberry, right? She's going to lay big brown eggs. She's going to be our best layer, but she's little. She's a lot like Snowball, the white one you met last time, right? So she's going to lay really well too. Anyway, real excited about her. This is our loud one. This is, I think we're going to call her Snow Boots because she's got feathery legs. And anyway, so she'll have black wings, black neck, but otherwise be all white. So I think we're going to call her Snow Boots. And then the last new member is Lavender here. So this is Lavender. She's gonna be kind of a lavender color when she's fully grown. We're kind of worried because her comb is so big, this little part on her head, right? And she's already got pretty serious wattles, right? So these wattles are anyway, this early can be indicative that she might actually be a rooster. So we're gonna see. Oh, and then we have another guest. Hey, bud, come here. This is Archer. He's my youngest. Say hello, Archer.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, he's a super cute dude. We're going to learn about business law today. Huh?
Day.
Yeah.
Day.
Yeah. So there's a question on the chat. Do we still need to attend class now? Yes and no. Okay, so you don't have to necessarily watch it live, but there are going to be a couple nuggets that there are going to be a couple nuggets of information in here that have nothing to do with business law, but have everything to do with gauging whether or not you actually listened to the lecture. And so I'm going to put a couple of those in each lecture so that you know whether or not we did it. Anyway, so you can sign off. You don't have to be on live, but you will have to watch the lecture. They won't be 90 minutes. It's looking like, based on the speed we go, they'll be roughly 30 minutes. Looks like we've got about 30 people watching now. So I think we're going to go ahead and take care of that item of class business. So based on those survey results I got, there are some people who just simply cannot be in class at the time appointed, which is now. But they're overwhelmingly, most of you still want to have the live stream at this time. So what we're going to do is we're going to have live streams. We're going to have a couple nuggets of information that'll be in the stream that you'll be quizzed on as your attendance proxy to be sure that you watched, because there's a few things that we cover that are a little different than what's in the text. The quizzes will be posted before noon each on the days that we have class, and then you have till midnight to take the quiz. So you'll have 12 hours. I think that should be plenty. And then let's see, what was the other thing? Yeah. So obviously, the quizzes they're going to have to be open book, open note. That's understandable. And there's not a time limit with them, just because of the way I have to deal with it. We'll obviously handle the final differently, but the quizzes are going to be open book, open note now. Okay. So I assume y'all are going to be okay with that. And then let's see. Okay, so we're going to start off today. We're going to talk about legality of contracts. So this is chapter 12. I posted the link on here. I'll get everything posted to Top Hat and send out the Canvas message. I have to do it a little differently, which is why it's being held up, to make sure that it makes sense with the quizzes. But legality, on chapter 12, we have we've talked about how an illegal contract is void. It never was a contract, but what makes it illegal? Okay. Let's see. So in this chapter 12, we are going to skip this little first section, general perspectives on illegality, and just go straight to this 12.2, agreements in violation of statute, right? So if you have an agreement or a contract that is in violation of the statute, that can cause it to become illegal, obviously. We covered that already in a hypothetical, right? We talked about Angela having someone clean out the frozen French fries from her freezer, and a requirement that visits be done by someone who's licensed, right? So this can, anyway, we alluded to that already. So we're going to cover some of this in more detail, okay? So some types of contracts that are made illegal by statutes. First is gambling, right? So in a lot of states, we make gambling contracts illegal for whatever public policy purposes. Gambling can be illegal, right? And it's got some information in your text about that, but the key takeaway there for quiz purposes is just that gambling contracts can be illegal. It mentions in your text Sunday contracts. Don't worry about that. There is usury, though. Usury is basically charging an illegal interest rate. Okay, so what we do is we say the interest rate you can charge up to this amount. Anything beyond that is considered usury. And we are making that illegal. Sometimes what that does is it makes people create new business models, right? Where it's not an interest rate, but it's a fee, different things like that. So anyway, but keep in mind, usury is just charging interest rates higher than what is allowed by statute. The most common one, though, that we'll likely quiz on is licensing statutes. Okay, so these are requirements that someone be licensed for a certain type of job or a certain type of occupation. Okay, and it lists, in your text, hairdressers, doctors, plumbers, real estate brokers, egg inspectors. These are all occupational licensing is kind of a hot button topic politically, because the goal is to the stated purpose of licensing statutes is to protect the public from unlicensed practitioners. However, what happens is people will, how can I put this? Sometimes the licensing statutes are so restrictive that you create a black market of unlicensed people operating. Not only that, but you limit those who want to stay within the confines of the law, but are unable to find employment if you have too many licenses required to operate. So, for example, Utah is one of the more restrictive states as far as occupational licensing, has the highest number of professions required where your license is required. So from a public policy standpoint, they're trying to identify those industries where they're not going to require licenses anymore. So just be aware of that. Let's see. Okay, and so as far as your quizzes go, you will likely have some kind of question about people entering a contract. Someone was unlicensed. Does that make it illegal? Does it make it void? Things like that. Okay. And then, so time for a quick nugget of information to test attendance, right? So in your quiz, there will be a question, what is fermenting in Caden? No, those have not been posted because of the survey results. So I'm having to modify them, and I will, anyway, so those should be up before noon today. I'll send out a Canvas message confirming when those are up, so you guys can be aware. But yeah, so for an attendance quiz question, okay, this is a hidden nugget of information. What is fermenting in Professor Melling's basement right now? The answer is kimchi, okay? It's not quite authentic because I don't have all the ingredients to make it authentic, but it's still pretty good. So what is fermenting in Professor Melling's basement right now? The answer is kimchi. So anyway, so that's going to be one of the attendance proxy questions in your quiz. Let's see. Okay, so back to, oh, hey, get off of there. Okay, so regulatory license. Oh, right. Okay. So there were just a couple other things we needed to cover in Chapter 12. One of those is, so these bargains made illegal by common law in 12.3. So it talks about restraints on trade, right? So generally, we do not want to place restraints on people being able to trade, right? Because that's bad for public policy. We want people to be able to work, to earn a living, to sell goods and services. So we don't want to put any restraints on that. Now, there is, so there's two of these, sale of a business and employment non-compete agreements in your text that are kind of related. But this is another one where we're going to focus a little more on Utah state law and talk about it. So generally, as a society, we don't want restraints on trade, right? We don't want people to be restricted in how they work. However, in a couple situations, especially in tech, where people are learning protected information, trade secrets, things like that, there's a push to enforce that, combined with a few other when people sell a business, they need to have their investment protected, and they need to, and the buyer needs to have their investment protected, right? So, so some of the things that we're looking at with that. Hey, Margaret, come here. Come here. Here, we got another guess. Okay. This is Margaret. Say hello, Margaret.
Hi.
Hi. What you holding there?
My stuffy unicorn.
Your stuffy unicorn. Yeah, she loves her unicorns. So, oh, that's fine. So, okay, so she's the only girl, so she is kind of the favorite, but we don't tell the boys that. Okay. Anyway, she's awesome. So, anyway, so with oh, that's right. So with non-compete and some of these other agreements, so we generally don't want restrictions. But let's say you're selling a business. Okay, you've worked hard for 30 years. You're selling a business. You have your client base, and you want a buyer that knows that their investment's protected, so you can charge more for selling this business. You are probably going to sign some kind of non-compete, right? Something that says, I'm selling my business, and I'm going to promise that I'm not going to work anymore in this type of industry within 100 miles of this city where I'm selling my business, right? Because if without that promise, it's going to be harder to sell the business, because what if you reopen shop and steal all the clients back, right? So that's the traditional reason why you'd want a non-compete agreement. Okay, you want that restraint on trade to allow investors to have their investment protected, but it comes with these non-compete agreements have some problems associated too, because let's say you're looking for your first job out of college, and jobs are scarce, and there's a company that says, look, we want you to come work for us, but because we're going to teach you secrets of the trade, we don't want you working for anyone else. So if you come and work for us, if whether we fire you or you quit or any other reason that you're no longer employed with us, you can't work for anyone else in that sector of the economy, in that type of business, for 3 years, until that information becomes obsolete, right? And that, in Utah, we said that's no longer appropriate. Okay, we don't want people to be able to do that. So any kind of non-compete agreement, unless it's part of the sale of a business, usually they're restricted to 1 year now. Okay, so you can say, look, you can't work in the sector of the economy for 1 year. Anything more than that is an illegal restraint on trade, and it's void, right? And there are fines even for making people sign that. So let's see. Oh, and then so the only other topic in this chapter we wanted to talk about is with family relations, with prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. Now, your text is not exactly right on this issue, as far as Utah state law at least goes. So a prenuptial is like a wedding, right? So prenuptial agreement is an agreement before the wedding. So the key there is any contract made between a couple, two people about to be married, is valid, because the consideration is going forward with the wedding, right? They could, so the condition, they're basically saying, look, we wouldn't get married if it weren't for this contract, and that's our consideration, okay? And they're not yet married, So from a public policy standpoint, we're okay with that as a society, right? We're okay with them saying, we're okay with saying, you're not married yet. We want to encourage marriage. If it takes this contract being valid for you to get married, we're okay with it. Okay. So whatever those terms are, whether it's that they're going to forego any kind of inheritance from each other, or that they're not going to lay claim to each other's business affairs, whatever that may be. And they're a valuable estate planning tool because in old age, especially because of the way our inheritance laws work, a lot of people want these done. Otherwise, they wouldn't remarry. Okay. And as a priority in public policy, we want to encourage marriage, encourage family bonds. So that's why these are allowed. Now, let's think about a postnuptial agreement. Okay. A postnuptial agreement is signed after the wedding. So it's a contract between spouses. Generally, the postnuptial agreement, the only consideration that could be offered is, well, we're not going to get divorced. And generally, those are not enforceable, or at least they're much harder to enforce. There has to be the natural factors at play have to be kind of different. And even though they're free to sign it, it's not going to always be an enforceable contract. So a postnuptial agreement, much harder to enforce than a prenuptial agreement. Okay. The purpose of the prenup is to encourage marriage. The purpose of the postnup from a public policy standpoint, not as much public policy interest in enforcing those. Okay. I think with right, and so just a quick takeaway in 12.4, what is the effect of illegality? So if a contract is seen as illegal, basically the court isn't going to enforce it. So they're going to be left as the court found them. No relief. It's kind of this hands-off policy. Okay, it's a void. There are some exceptions, and we're not going to ask you to memorize any of those. Okay. So this the next chapter, chapter 13. There are just a couple little things I want you to take away from this chapter. So you're not expected to remember this whole chapter. We are going to talk about statute of frauds for a minute. We've already talked about statute of frauds in class and alluded to it several times, right? So that when it comes up and you have to remember it, it's easier to remember, okay? So if you remember, statute of frauds is what types of contracts are required to be in writing, okay? And there's a few of them, 6 to be exact, 6 types of contracts. But for purposes of this class, you only have to remember 3, okay? So the first one is real estate. If it's a real estate contract for the sale of real estate, it's got to be in writing, okay? Second is marriage. So if you're going to get married, that contract needs to be in writing. And third is a services or goods contract that is unlikely to be executed within 12 months, right? So if it's a contract whose terms are going to span over a year, it's got to be in writing, okay? So if you remember those 3, you're going to be good. There are some others, but it's just not worth having you remember them. Let's see. And then, sorry, I'm just scrolling down. And then 13.2, the parole evidence rule is it's another rule that we're going to have you remember. Okay. Parole evidence rule is, so there's quite a bit in this chapter on parole evidence. But the key takeaway is, are we looking at any outside evidence with a contract? Okay. So let's say we have a contract. It's like 10 pages long. And it says it has the full understanding of the parties. Okay. Now we sign the contract. But leading up to the signing, there were a lot of discussions verbally. Well, let's do this or let's do that. Little exceptions here and there. Okay. But they never made it into the finished contract. Under the parole evidence rule, those discussions don't count. Okay. Really, the parole evidence rule says whatever's in the contract, that's what we're going to look at. We're not going to look at anything else. Okay. So the rule at common law is that a written contract intended to be the parties' complete understanding discharges all prior promises, statements, or agreement that add to, vary, or conflict with it. Okay. So basically what you see is what you get with the contract. Okay. Anyway, there are some exceptions. We're not going to worry about those exceptions. Okay. And then 13.3, we're going to ignore entirely. Okay. So like I said, with contracts, this, we have, what is it, 7 or 8 chapters on contracts. And we just don't have 2 semesters to cover contracts, right? We're covering a lot of other things. So we're going to kind of ignore some of those other things and focus on those things that are most important and most likely to come up, not only in the CPA exam, but in real life. Okay. Anyway, we're going to leave off with that. So we had the one question, attendance-based, that was earlier in that you'll have to go digging to find. The other one is which is the smallest of our baby chicks. Okay. That is Strawberry. Okay. Strawberry's the smallest, but she's going to be the best layer. Okay. So the question, which is the smallest of Professor Melling's baby chicks, answer is Strawberry. Okay. Oops. There we go. Okay. So that's it for class today. Like I said, those I'll send a Canvas message when everything's up. Should be done by noon, so that you so that we can have those quizzes in a different format, but still posted. So anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. Shoot me a text, whatever. And we'll see you guys later.